This is eternal human spirit, where every story proves why humanity never breaks.
The arrival of mockery. The great hall of the Galactic Council was filled with light, sound, and pride. Hundreds of alien species had gathered, their banners glowing, their voices sharp, and their eyes fixed on the newest guests. At the far end of the hall, tall alien lords whispered and laughed, their faces shining with arrogance. In the middle of this enormous chamber, the humans stood small, almost fragile compared to the towering alien figures. They were dressed in plain uniforms, not covered, with glittering medals or flowing robes like the others, and to many they looked unimpressive. One alien lord leaned to his companion and sneered. These creatures call themselves a species of warriors, yet they are made of soft flesh, their bones weak, their lifespan short. Another laughed, his long fangs glimmering. If a storm touches them, they break. If a fire touches them, they burn. What power could such fragile beings ever hold? The room echoed with cruel laughter, a wave of mockery rolling from one alien to another. The humans did not respond. Their leader, a soldier with sharp eyes and a quiet presence, simply stood tall, his hands behind his back, his breathing calm. The mocking continued. One alien shouted, "Tell us, little earthlings, what do you bring? To the galaxy. Do you have technology to rival ours? Do you have ships faster than light? Do you have strength to bend steel with your hands?" The human soldier did not answer. His silence angered the crowd. They wanted a reaction. They wanted weakness. They wanted proof that humans were nothing more than dust beneath their claws. Finally, the leader of the alien council, a massive being with armor fused to his body, raised his hand, silencing the noise. He leaned forward, his deep voice shaking. The hall. "Humans, you are welcome here only to amuse us. Your world is small, your fleets are few, your lives are short. Tell us, why should the galaxy not crush you beneath its heel?" The silence that followed was heavy. Every alien eye locked on the humans, expecting stuttering, fear, or excuses. But the human soldier finally spoke, his voice calm, steady, and unbroken. "You see us as weak, you see us as fragile, but there is something you do not understand." Some aliens leaned closer, their curiosity touched by his confidence. Others snorted in disbelief. The soldier continued, his eyes never blinking. "We do not fight for conquest. We do not fight for greed. We do not fight for pride. We fight for something greater than any empire here can imagine." The hall erupted. Again, laughter shook the walls. "Greater, greater than empires," they mocked. What could such insects possibly fight for? The soldier raised his chin, his face set like stone. "We fight for family." The laughter grew louder, echoing like thunder. But some aliens frowned, confused. The word meant little to them. One commander of a reptilian race hissed, "Family, that is no weapon. Family does not shield you from plasma fire. Family does not destroy starships. You speak like children." The soldier only replied with a small, knowing smile. "You will learn," the alien council roared, their voices filling the chamber, calling humans fools, calling them weak, calling them unworthy of standing among greater civilizations. But hidden beneath the mockery, a seed of unease had been planted, because the human had spoken without fear, without hesitation, and without shame. The council could not understand it, but they could not forget it either. They dismissed the humans, laughing as they left, but in the quiet corners of the chamber, some alien eyes followed the humans with something different than scorn. They watched with suspicion and a faint shadow of doubt as the humans walked. Out of the grand hall, the soldier whispered to his companion, his voice low but steady, "They will never understand until it is too late. They will never see the strength that holds us together until it breaks their empires apart." The companion nodded, his eyes reflecting both pride and sorrow. "Then let them laugh, Captain, for their laughter will turn to silence when they see what family truly means." The soldier gave no answer, but his gaze was firm, his heart heavy with the weight of the future. For he knew the days ahead would test humanity like never before, and he knew the galaxy would soon learn the truth. The challenge. The great halls of the alien empires echoed with laughter long after the humans had left, to the mighty civilizations of the galaxy. Humanity was nothing more than a curious animal that had learned to speak and build ships. They had mocked the humans to their faces and sent them away with jeers. But as the laughter faded and the council returned to its business, not all were convinced that humanity was as weak as they claimed. There was something in the human leader's words, something in his quiet confidence that unsettled the oldest rulers of the stars, and so in their arrogance, the empires decided to test humanity, to break them in front of everyone and to prove once and for all that Earth was a mistake among the stars. The challenge came swiftly. The council announced that one of the frontier human colonies would be visited by an alien fleet, not for war, they claimed, but for a trial. The aliens said it was to measure humanity's resolve. But the truth was simple. They wished to humiliate mankind. They wanted to see humans fall to their knees. They wanted the galaxy to laugh as Earth begged for mercy. To the aliens, this was nothing but a game. But to the humans, it was survival. It was dignity. It was their honor. The colony chosen was Vega 9, a small settlement orbiting a red sun. Its cities were not grand like alien metropolises. Its people were miners, engineers, and families who had left Earth to build a life on the frontier. They were ordinary men, women, and children. And when news came that an alien fleet was approaching, fear spread like fire. Mothers held their children close. Fathers prepared shelters. Soldiers stood in silence, for they knew they were outnumbered, outgunned, and outmatched. The alien fleet was enormous, black ships with jagged edges that blotted out the stars as they descended, each vessel larger than a mountain, bristling with weapons that could vaporize cities in a breath. To the humans, watching from the ground, it was like the sky itself had turned against them. The alien commander's voice echoed across the colony through booming transmissions, his tone dripping with arrogance. "People of Earth, your leaders claim you are strong. They claim you hold a power beyond empires. Today, you will prove it, or you will be crushed beneath our claws." The human defense fleet arrived, small, outnumbered ships that were older and slower than the alien giants, but the captains aboard those ships did not hesitate. They took their places between the colony and the invaders, forming a fragile wall of steel and courage. The alien commander sneered, "You defend with toys. Your weapons are sticks against thunder. Why do you not surrender and save yourselves?" But the human fleet gave no answer. They powered their weapons. They locked their shields. They stood ready. Down on Vega 9, the colony prepared as well. Civilians were moved underground. Engineers converted mining equipment into crude defenses. Children were hidden away in shelters, while soldiers lined the streets with rifles that looked pitiful against the thought of plasma cannons. Yet there was no chaos, no surrender, only quiet determination. They had no illusions. They knew they could not win, but they also knew they could not abandon each other. The alien council watched from afar, eager for the humiliation to begin. One alien lord grinned. "They will break within minutes. They will run. They will beg." But another, older and wiser, shook his head slowly. "Do you not see their eyes? Do you not hear their silence? These are not the cries of weaklings. These are the whispers of something dangerous." But his warning was drowned by the laughter of his peers. As the fleets faced one another above Vega 9, the human captain sent a final message to his crew. "Remember what we fight for, not for glory, not for riches, but for the people below us, for the families who trust us, for the children who deserve. Tomorrow, we may fall today, but if we fall protecting them, we will never be weak." The words spread like fire through the fleet, and every human hand tightened on their controls. Every heart steadied, every fear turned into resolve. DT. Alien Commander gave the order. Plasma cannons lit the void with blinding fire. Human shields strained and cracked. Ships shuddered under the first strike. Explosions bloomed in the dark, but not a single vessel turned to run. Instead, the humans answered, their smaller cannons flashing, their torpedoes streaking, their fighters darting like angry sparks against the vast enemy wall. To the aliens it was laughable. To the humans it was survival. To the galaxy it was a lesson beginning to unfold. On the ground, the first wave of alien drones descended, machines of war built to terrify and destroy. But the miners and engineers of Vega 9 raised their improvised defenses, barricades of steel and laser cutters, weapons welded from mining drills. They fired with desperation and courage. Mothers shielded their children. Fathers fought shoulder to shoulder. Neighbors defended neighbors. No one stood alone. Every act of defiance was born from family. Every strike was fueled by love. The alien commander watched in disbelief. Why do they resist? Why do they throw their fragile lives into fire? He demanded. His officers shifted uneasily. None could answer, because to them, life was survival of the strongest. They could not understand sacrifice for others. They could not understand loyalty to blood and bond. As the battle raged, the galaxy leaned forward, watching in silence. The laughter of the council began to fade, replaced by unease. The humans were losing ships. Their defenses were breaking. Their colony was burning. But still, they stood. Still, they resisted. And still, they refused to surrender. The challenge had begun as a mockery, a game of power and humiliation. But within hours it became something else entirely. It became a question whispered through the stars. If humanity is so weak, why do they not break? If they are so fragile, why do they not surrender? What is it that drives them to fight against a certain defeat? And though the answer had not yet been spoken, the galaxy was beginning to feel it, like a storm building on the horizon. A truth too powerful to ignore. Humanity's strength was not in ships or weapons, but in the bond no empire could destroy, the bond of family, and soon the aliens who mocked them would come to understand it in fear. The first battle. The stars above Vega 9 burned bright and cold as the alien fleet unleashed its fury. Plasma fire poured across the blackness of space, and the fragile line of human ships shuddered beneath the storm. Explosions blossomed like cruel flowers in the void, tearing apart steel and scattering debris into the emptiness. To the alien commanders watching, this was the end. It was the moment when humanity would bend, break, and surrender. But to their shock, no such surrender came. The human fleet, though battered and burning, refused to retreat. They tightened their formation. Their captains barked orders through smoke-filled bridges, and their crews fought with every ounce of will. One human ship, the Valiant, was struck through its side. Flames raged inside, alarms screamed, and yet the captain refused to abandon his post. His voice rang steady across the comms. "Hold the line. Protect the colony. We cannot let them." Through, his crew, though coughing and bleeding, cheered and carried on. They rerouted power, patched what they could, and fired their weapons again. The alien commander sneered, baffled. "They fight like dying animals. Why do they not yield?" His officers could not answer, because to them war was about conquest and pride, not about defending the innocent, not about protecting lives beyond their own. Down below, Vega 9 trembled as alien drones rained from the skies. Machines of steel and claws stormed across the dusty ground, their weapons spitting fire, their metallic bodies glinting in the glow of burning cities. But the colonists met them with every weapon they had: rifles, drills, flamethrowers built from mining equipment. Every alley became a battlefield, every rooftop a fortress. Families huddled together while neighbors fought side by side. Men and women who had never been soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder against machines designed for slaughter. And though they fell in numbers, they did not run. A mother with nothing but a hand-carved blade stood over her children as drones closed in. Before the machines could strike, human soldiers charged into the street, firing wildly, cutting down. The drones. They pulled the mother and her children to safety. The soldiers shouted, "Stay with us. We protect each other." And in that moment, the family bond was not just between blood, but between all who called themselves human. The aliens watched through their scanners and grew restless, for to them such behavior was madness. Sacrificing oneself for others was weakness, but what they saw was a strength they could not measure. The battle in orbit grew fiercer. Alien cruisers closed in, their weapons blasting human vessels apart. Yet every time a ship fell, another moved to fill the gap. The line never broke. The alien commander roared in fury. Crush them, grind them to dust. But the humans continued to resist. Their fighters swarmed in small groups, darting between massive alien hulls, striking weak points, cutting supply ships, and retreating before counterfire could destroy them. They fought like wolves, fierce and coordinated, never alone, always covering each other. On the bridge of the alien flagship, an officer reported with unease, "Commander, they are fighting. Beyond reason, they lose ships, yet they grow fiercer." The commander's fangs gleamed as he snarled, "Then we will show them despair, target the colony itself, let them watch their families burn." The order spread like lightning. Weapons turned downward, and beams of destructive fire lanced toward Vega 9. Entire districts crumbled, towers fell, screams rose. But instead of breaking, the humans screamed back in defiance. Soldiers raised their rifles. Ships threw themselves into the line of fire to block the colony below. One human destroyer, its hull already aflame, dove directly into the path of a plasma barrage, shielding the settlement for just long enough for families to escape. The ship was annihilated, but its sacrifice saved thousands. The alien commander stared in disbelief, his mocking laughter gone. They threw away a warship. For what? For civilians. His words dripped with confusion. His officers shifted in silence, for they had no explanation. They had never seen such an act. To them, civilians were burdens, expendable shadows. But to humans, civilians were the reason to fight, the reason to live, the reason to die. Back on the ground, the battle turned into a nightmare. Smoke choked the air. Fire roared across the colony. But the people of Vega 9 fought as if the world itself depended on their courage. Squads of Marines covered evacuations. Farmers armed with old rifles held streets against machines. Engineers sabotaged drone control nodes with explosives built. From mining charges, even children carried supplies to the fighters, and every act of resistance was fueled by one truth. They were not fighting for glory or conquest. They were fighting for family. As the hours passed, the galaxy itself leaned closer. Millions of eyes across countless worlds watched the battle through transmissions, and what they saw shook them. Humans, small and weak in the eyes of the galaxy, standing unbroken against overwhelming fire, ships crumbling but refusing to flee, soldiers dying but never surrendering, families holding hands in bunkers while explosions rocked the ground. Aliens who had once laughed at humanity now watched in silence. The council chambers that had mocked Earth just days before grew quiet, whispers spreading like fire. Why do they fight so hard? Why do they refuse to yield? The answer began to form, though not in words. It was there in every act of defiance, in every sacrifice, in every tear shed and every shot fired. Humanity's strength was not in technology or numbers. It was not in power or size. It was in love, loyalty, and unbreakable family bonds. And though the aliens could not yet admit it, they were beginning to feel fear, for they were facing something they had never known. At last, as the first day of battle drew to a close, both sides bloodied and battered, the human soldier who had spoken in the council stood again at the front of his men, his face streaked with ash, his voice calm. "We may fall, but we will never bow. We fight for those we love, and no empire can ever understand that." His words carried across the colony, across the fleet, and across the stars, and though the aliens still believed victory was theirs, they could not escape the truth settling like a shadow over their pride. The humans were not breaking. They were rising. The bond of family. The battle for Vega 9 dragged into its second day. The skies were filled with smoke and fire. The earth trembled under endless bombardment, and the air carried the cries of both the living and the fallen. To the alien commanders, this should have been the moment of collapse, the moment when humans broke apart and surrendered. Yet what they saw unsettled them deeply. For the humans did not fight like scattered individuals. They fought like a single living body. Every soldier, every colonist, every family was tied, together by an invisible chain that no weapon could cut. A group of alien drones stormed into the ruins of a collapsed district, their metal claws clicking, their weapons glowing with deadly fire. They expected to find terrified humans running. In chaos, instead, they found something entirely different. Families huddled together in makeshift shelters, shielding one another, mothers shielding children, siblings shielding siblings. Old and young alike standing with whatever tools they could hold. When the drones advanced, human soldiers surged forward, shouting not for themselves, but for the ones behind them, and though many fell, their sacrifices bought seconds, and those seconds saved lives. Among the ruins, an alien scout witnessed something that froze him in place. A wounded human soldier lay bleeding, his weapon broken, his breath shallow. Yet when a child stumbled near him, crying in fear, the soldier dragged his broken body to shield the boy, whispering softly, "Don't be afraid. You will see your family again." The scout reported this back to his commander, confused and shaken. "They fight not for victory, but for each other," he said, and his commander snarled in disbelief. "That is weakness. It will destroy them." Yet, even as he said the words, he felt the unease gnawing at his pride. The alien council received endless reports of the humans. Defiance, their analysts struggled to understand. They are outnumbered, outgunned, yet they resist with unnatural resolve, one declared. Another asked, is it loyalty to their leaders? A third suggested, perhaps it is madness. But an old alien scholar whispered what none wished to hear. No, it is not madness, it is devotion. It is something greater than duty. They call it family. The council laughed again, though weaker this time, their voices more uncertain than before. In orbit, the human fleet continued its desperate defense. Ships scarred and broken still moved in unison. One destroyer, heavily damaged, turned itself into a shield, covering a transport ship carrying civilians. Another frigate, engines burning, rammed an alien cruiser to stop it from reaching the planet below. Each act was suicidal, each sacrifice devastating. But together, they formed a wall that no alien could breach, and in every case the reason was the same. Not orders, not strategy, but the instinct to protect those they loved. On the ground, stories spread like wildfire. Tales of neighbors who gave their last breath to shield families they barely knew, of children carrying water to wounded soldiers, of strangers risking their lives for one another, as if all humanity were one great family. And in this unity the colonists found strength. Their fear turned to fire, their sorrow turned to steel, and the more the aliens pushed, the stronger the bond became. One alien officer captured a group of civilians and demanded they reveal hidden resistance fighters, but the civilians refused, even under threat of death. They protected those who had protected them, and when the officer snarled, "Why die for them? They are not your blood," a woman replied with fierce eyes, "They are my people. That is enough." The officer executed her, yet her words haunted him, echoing louder than the gunfire around him. The alien commander of the fleet grew restless. His soldiers were shaken, their discipline cracking. "Why are they not afraid?" he roared, slamming a clawed hand against the control table. "Why do they not break?" His second-in-command hesitated before answering. "Commander, they fight as though death is nothing to them, because they do not fight for themselves. They fight for something beyond them, something we do not have." The commander bared his fangs in rage. "Then we will strip it from them. Burn their families, scatter their bonds." But deep inside he knew that was impossible, for what he fought against was not flesh, but spirit. As the day ended, the human leader, the same soldier who once stood in the council, walked among the wounded, his body tired but his gaze strong. He spoke gently to the survivors. "We stand because we stand together. We live because we protect each other. Family is not weakness, it is the reason we endure." His words were carried across the colony, repeated by soldiers, whispered by children, and felt by all, even as death closed in. The flame of family grew brighter. In distant systems, alien species who watched the battle began to murmur. Many had once laughed at humans. Now they stared in silence, some with awe, some with doubt, and some with fear. The lesson was beginning to spread across the stars. Humanity was not defined by their fragile bodies, but by the invisible chains of love and loyalty that bound them stronger than steel. And so the aliens who mocked them began to realize the terrible truth, a truth that struck harder than any weapon. Humanity's greatest strength was not in their fleets, not in their armies, not in their technology. It was in the bond of family, a bond that gave them courage when all hope was lost, a bond that turned their weakness into unstoppable resilience, a bond that no empire could ever destroy. The turning point. The galaxy had expected humanity to crumble within hours, yet days had passed and still the humans held, battered and bloodied but never bowing. And now something strange was happening, something the alien commanders had not foreseen. The longer the battle dragged on, the stronger the humans seemed to grow. Their resolve hardened like iron. Their courage multiplied with every loss, and their unity turned despair into defiance. The aliens had thought family was weakness, but they were learning it was the very force that transformed fragile creatures into unbreakable warriors. In orbit, the wreckage of ships drifted like grave markers, but among the ruins the human fleet still moved with coordination, each vessel covering the other, fighters weaving patterns of sacrifice and protection. When one ship was crippled, another placed itself between the enemy and its ally. When a squadron ran out of ammunition, another risked fire to resupply them. And though the alien fleet was larger and stronger, it began to falter against this endless wave of loyalty. "They fight like a single organism," an alien officer muttered in disbelief. "Each part bleeding for the other, each piece refusing to abandon the whole." His commander growled but could not deny what he saw. On the ground, the colony of Vega 9 became a fortress of spirit, though its walls burned and its streets collapsed. The people refused to break apart. Families huddled together in underground tunnels. Soldiers fought block by block. Neighbors defended each other, and even the wounded crawled back to the front lines to shield those who could still fight. In one shattered district, a grandmother stood in front of alien drones. Armed with nothing but a broken pipe, she faced death without trembling, because behind her were children who had no one else. When soldiers pulled her back to safety, her words spread through the ranks. "If I must fall, let it be for them, for they are my family." And her courage became fuel for hundreds who refused to give ground. The alien commander watched from his flagship and felt unease creeping into his bones. His claws tapped the metal table as report after report came. They will not retreat. They are regrouping. Their morale is rising despite losses. It was madness, yet it was happening before his very eyes. He ordered more fire, more drones, more destruction, and yet each strike only seemed to strengthen the human's will. "Why?" he demanded, slamming his hand against the console. "Why do they not break?" His officers gave no answer because they had none. Then came the moment that shifted the tide. In orbit, a human frigate, known as the Resolve, was struck hard, its engines destroyed, its shields gone, its crew preparing for the end, but instead of surrendering, the Resolve made a desperate decision. Its captain gave one final order. Aim the ship at their cruiser. Prepare to ram. For our families. For Earth. For humanity. The crew cheered with broken voices, and the frigate, engulfed in flame, hurled itself into the heart of an alien warship. The explosion tore through the void, annihilating both vessels, but the shockwave of that sacrifice rippled far beyond the battlefield. For the aliens, it was unthinkable. A ship choosing certain death simply to protect others. For the humans, it was proof of their greatest truth, that family was worth every sacrifice. Across the fleet, cheers erupted, soldiers shouted louder, fighters dove with reckless courage, the colony below roared with renewed hope, and even those who had been ready to give up found new fire in their hearts. That single act of sacrifice became a beacon, a turning point, a moment that declared humanity would never be erased. The alien council, watching from afar, grew restless. What they had planned as a public humiliation was turning into something else. Instead of proving humanity's weakness, they had revealed their strength to the entire galaxy. Whispers spread across alien worlds. Perhaps humanity is not weak. Perhaps they are stronger than all of us in ways we do not understand. Rulers, who once laughed, now sat in silence, realizing the Empire's pride was being shattered before every eye in the stars. Back on Vega 9, the colonists pushed forward, coordinated strikes cut down alien drone centers, engineers hacked into enemy signals and disrupted control nodes. Soldiers fought not like desperate defenders but like warriors who had already accepted death and thus feared nothing. Their unity made them unpredictable. Their sacrifices made them unstoppable. One alien officer whispered in horror, "They are changing the battle. They should be falling, but they are rising." His commander snarled but could not hide the tremor in his voice. At night, fires burned across the colony. The skies glowed red with destruction. Yet even in that darkness humans found light. Families, gathered in shelters, holding hands, whispering songs, telling stories, reminding each other that tomorrow was worth fighting for. Soldiers walked among them, drawing strength from those smiles. And when dawn broke, the humans rose not weaker, but stronger. The alien commander finally understood a fragment of the truth. He spoke in a low voice that carried fear. They fight for something we cannot break, something beyond logic, something beyond survival. They fight for family. But his pride forced him to deny it. No matter, they will burn. All families burn the same. Yet even as he said it, he felt the weight of doubt pressing against his heart. And so, as the 5th day of battle came to its end, the war for Vega 9 had reached its turning point. What began as a spectacle of mockery had become a testament of defiance. The aliens still held the advantage in numbers and weapons. But humanity now held the advantage of spirit, and spirit was proving stronger than fire. The galaxy watched in silence as the balance shifted and whispers grew louder across the stars. They called humanity weak, yet they rise again and again. What will happen if they cannot be broken? The answer would come soon, but already the Empire knew in its heart that something irreversible had begun. Humanity's turning point was not just in this battle, but in the perception of every species. Who watched? They were no longer insects to be crushed. They were a storm of devotion, loyalty, and family, and the storm was only growing stronger. The shattering of pride. The alien empire could not tolerate it any longer. What was meant to be a display of power had turned into a wound against their pride, and pride was something the empire valued more than life itself. For countless centuries they had ruled unchallenged. Their fleets had crushed world after world. Their banners had flown over 1,000 conquered skies, and no one had ever dared resist for long. But humanity had done the unthinkable. Humanity had stood against them. Humanity had refused to bow. And now the entire galaxy was watching. and the Empire's laughter had turned into whispers of doubt. The alien High Council gathered in fury, their armored forms towering in a circle of firelight, voices echoing across the chamber. "Enough of this humiliation," one snarled. "The humans resist, and the stars themselves whisper their defiance. We must end this," another hissed. "If we allow them to stand any longer, our rule will weaken, our name will falter." The council leader raised his clawed hand, his eyes burning with rage. "Then we will unleash the storm. We will crush their colony, their fleets, their families, until nothing remains. Let the galaxy see that pride belongs only to the Empire." And with that command, the largest fleet the Empire had ever gathered in one place began its march toward Vega 9. The skies darkened as the new fleet arrived, Titanic battleships blotting out the stars, carriers unleashing endless swarms of drones, colossal weapons glowing with destructive fire. It was a sight meant to end hope, a display of such overwhelming might that no race in the galaxy could stand against it. The alien commander roared through transmissions that thundered across every human channel. "This is your end, fragile ones. You dared to resist. You dared to defy us. But now your families will burn, your homes will turn to ash, and your name will be forgotten." But on Vega 9, the humans did not tremble. Instead, they gathered closer, families clutching each other, soldiers standing shoulder to shoulder, captains preparing their scarred fleets, and across the colony a single message was spoken and repeated like a sacred vow. "We fight together. We fall together, and even in death we remain family." The words carried strength far greater than any threat, and when the alien fleet descended with fury, the humans rose with fire in their hearts. The battle that followed was chaos made flesh. The Empire's ships unleashed storms of plasma and fire, tearing through human defenses. Cities exploded into rubble, and still the humans resisted. The colony's streets turned into rivers of smoke and blood, but each time the Empire thought victory was theirs, the humans rose again. Soldiers shielded civilians with their bodies. Parents shielded children with their last breaths. Ships that should have fled instead turned and rammed enemy cruisers. Every act of sacrifice lit another flame, and the Empire found itself drowning in an ocean of courage. One alien warlord watched in disbelief as an entire human squadron sacrificed itself to protect a single refugee ship carrying families. "They give their lives for children," he muttered in shock. His second-in-command replied bitterly, "Yes, and for that they fight with a strength we cannot match." But the warlord could not accept it. His pride screamed that this was weakness, yet in his heart he felt the terrible truth, that this weakness was defeating his empire's pride. The turning moment came when the alien fleet prepared its final strike, a weapon so massive it could split the colony in half. The alien commander announced it proudly. "Now you will witness true power. Now you will learn the price of defiance." The galaxy held its breath, expecting humanity's end, but then something extraordinary happened. The human fleet, broken and shattered, rallied together one last time. Every surviving ship, no matter how damaged, aligned itself in front of the colony. A wall of burning steel and battered hulls. Captains gave their final orders without hesitation. For the families below, for the children, for Earth, hold the line. And the fleet, glowing like falling stars, braced for the storm. The alien weapon fired, a beam of destruction that could annihilate a world. It struck the human wall, tearing ships apart, ripping metal into dust. But instead of falling, the humans endured. Ship after ship exploded in sacrifice, but the wall held. For every vessel that fell, another covered the gap. For every fire that consumed a crew, another lit the sky with defiance, and as the beam faded, the colony still stood, scarred, broken, but alive, because humanity had refused to move. The galaxy gasped in silence. The alien council stared in disbelief. Their pride shattered, for in their attempt to humiliate humanity, they had revealed their own weakness. They had shown the stars that pride and arrogance could be broken, but love and loyalty could not. Their greatest weapon had failed against the smallest race they had mocked. On the ground, families emerged from shelters, holding hands, tears streaming down their faces. They looked up at the sky filled with wreckage of their protectors. And though their defenders were gone, their spirit was unbroken. The colony cheered not in triumph but in gratitude, for they had seen the truth. Their people had given everything, and that sacrifice had saved them. Among the alien fleets, whispers of fear spread. Soldiers who had once mocked humans now lowered their eyes. Commanders who had boasted of easy victory now trembled in shame. And across the galaxy the story spread like wildfire. Humanity had stood against the storm and endured. They had shattered the pride of an empire, and all because of the strength of family. The alien commander, once so certain of victory, now stared into the ruined sky with hollow eyes, his voice broken. How do they resist us? And his, second in command, answered with words that burned like fire. Because they are not fighting for themselves. Commander, they fight for each other, and that is a strength we will never understand. And so the empire, though still vast and powerful, was wounded in its soul. For its pride had been shattered before the eyes of the galaxy, and all because of the race it had called weak. Humanity had proven that the bonds of family were stronger than the weapons of empires, and though the war was not over, the balance had shifted. The storm had passed, and in its place rose a legend that could never be forgotten. The lesson of humanity. The smoke of battle still clung to the skies of Vega 9. The wreckage of ships drifted in orbit like a silent graveyard. The ground was scarred with fire and blood, and yet through the ruin there was life. Families crawled. From shelters, children cried out for parents who embraced them with trembling arms. Soldiers staggered through the dust carrying both the living and the fallen, and across the galaxy billions of alien eyes watched in stunned silence. For what they had witnessed was something no empire could deny. Humanity had stood against annihilation, and endured. The alien council, once filled with laughter and mockery, now sat in heavy silence, their proud faces hardened with disbelief, their voices low with shame. One counselor hissed, "This should not have been possible. They were weak. They were fragile. They had no right to resist us." Another muttered bitterly, "And yet they did. They resisted not with power, but with something greater." The chamber grew restless, whispers rising, until the council leader slammed his claw against the table. "We cannot allow this lesson to spread. If other races believe as the humans do, our rule will crumble." But deep inside, even he knew the truth. The lesson had already spread like fire across the stars, and no decree could erase it. In the colony ruins, the human leader stood once more, his uniform torn, his body covered in ash. But his gaze steady as ever, he looked upon his people. Families reunited, children clutching their parents, neighbors embracing neighbors. And he spoke words that carried across every surviving channel. They called us weak. They mocked our fragility. They tried to break us, but they did not understand. Our strength is not in ships or weapons. Our strength is in each other. We are strong because we protect our families, because we refuse to let go of one another, and no empire can ever take that from us. The people raised their voices in unison, a cry that was not of victory but of unbroken spirit, a cry that echoed through the galaxy louder than any weapon. Across distant worlds, alien species whispered in awe. Some who had lived in fear of the empire now saw hope. If humanity, the small and fragile race mocked by all, could endure against impossible odds, then perhaps others could rise as well. In marketplaces and temples, in military barracks and royal courts, the same words spread like a chant. Humans fight for family, and family is stronger than pride. The empire felt the shift. They saw their control weaken. not because of weapons, but because of an idea born from humanity's sacrifice. Among the alien fleets, soldiers, who had once mocked the humans, began to question their commanders. Some spoke quietly. Would we fight so hard for each other? Others admitted, perhaps we are the weaker ones, for we fight only for orders and conquest, but they fight for love. And such thoughts, once unthinkable, spread like cracks through stone. The Empire's pride was wounded deeper than any blade could cut. On Vega 9, survivors buried their dead with honor. Fathers carried fallen sons, daughters wept for mothers, brothers embraced sisters. Yet there was no despair, for every tear was matched with a vow to remember, a vow to endure, a vow to carry forward the lesson of family. The colony had lost much, but what it had gained was far greater. It had shown the galaxy the unbreakable spirit of humanity. The Ninoshikad, alien commander, who once mocked humans with laughter, now stood alone on his flagship, his voice hollow as he admitted to himself what his pride would not let him say aloud. We thought them fragile, yet they are stronger than us. We thought them insects, yet they are giants in spirit. We thought them worthless, yet they have taught the galaxy what power truly is. His reflection in the glass showed not a conqueror, but a broken shadow, for he knew that the Empire had lost more than a battle. It had lost its pride forever. In time, the Battle of Vega 9 became legend, sung in human cities, whispered in alien courts, carved into the memory of the stars, not as a tale of victory or conquest, but as a story of unity, love, and the strength of family. Children grew up hearing the words of the soldier who had stood in the council, "We fight for family," and they carried those words in their hearts as a shield stronger than steel. And so humanity, once mocked, once scorned, once dismissed as weak, rose in the eyes of the galaxy, not because of their weapons, not because of their fleets, but because they revealed the truth hidden in plain sight, that the greatest power in the universe is not pride, not conquest, not fear, but the bond of family. The alien council, now fearful and silent, could not erase this truth, for it had been written in blood and sacrifice. It had been carved into the stars by those who gave everything for their loved ones, and it had been seen by every eye across the galaxy. And though the Empire still stood with fleets and armies, its pride was shattered beyond repair. For every time they looked upon humanity, they would remember the day they laughed and the day that laughter died. And so the lesson was clear as the soldier spoke once more before his people and before the galaxy. His words soft but unshakable. They called us weak until they discovered the power of family, and in that discovery they were defeated. For family is strength, family is courage, family is humanity. The crowd rose in silence and then in thunderous unity, and that cry became the song of Earth and of every colony, a song that echoed through every star system that had once doubted, for humanity had proven what no empire ever could, that true strength does not come from fear, but from love, not from domination, but from unity, and not from pride, but from the simple, unbreakable truth that family is everything.
Thank you for joining Eternal Human Spirit, where humanity always rises again.